is July 24th, 2022. It is Sunday, and that means it's in the time for another episode of Misfits of the Galaxy, a vlog series where I kind of ramble and amble about campaign I intend on running for my fellow players of the Isle of Misfit Rolls. If you haven't heard of us before, I'll put a link down below. We've been a podcast group for several years, running in a campaign world created by our DM, Mike, called Vertes. And we transitioned, I believe it was earlier on this year, or it might have been just the tail end of last year, to a Twitch live stream format. So our material can be consumed in multiple formats. If you want to jump in and listen to our Twitch live stream, it is normally hosted typically about 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to about 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays. Occasionally we will take a rest bed from it or a break, and that's what we're doing currently. But I think, I'm not 100% certain, but not this week coming up, but the following week I think we're resuming. It is, as I said, it's the 24th of July, and that means the countdown for the Spelljammer box set is coming out on the 24 days from now, so I'm super stoked. So Misfits of the Galaxy, for those who are just tuning in for the very first time, is going to be a space opera sci-fi version of 5e for the group. And I've been working on it pretty much since January. It was a New Year's resolution originally that kind of I've managed to keep up with, thankfully. So that's good to hear. I've been putting my own spin on everything because I am a fan of Spelljammer. Some of the wackiness of it kind of needs to be toned down a little. And not to mention, when I started this, they hadn't even announced a Spelljammer box set. Instead, I was kind of inspired by a book I picked up called Dark Matter by Mage Press. I'll put a link down below. They make excellent material. This particular vlog is in no way sponsored by them whatsoever. It's just, I'll give credit where it's due. They make a lot of pretty good third-party 5e material, and I really wish and hope for the best for them for continuing to come out with excellent product. So, with that out of the way, I am going to talk about one of my favorite races today, the Dwarves. Really haven't discussed them very much. I focused a lot on classes as well as the elves to a certain extent, and the Ave Ra, because the two primary forces that are competing for the galaxy at large are the Ave Ra theocracy and the Eldari Empire. Well, the Dwarven Conclaves have managed to keep themselves out of the war due to their somewhat xenophobic as well as isolationist point of view. So the dwarves, who call themselves the Dawi, are your typical typical 5e dwarves with a kind of a mix of Dragon Age dwarves as well as Warhammer dwarves into them. A culture based on honor, hard work, and labor. Honestly, of all the Dungeons and Dragons dwarves that they closely resemble, I think the dwarves of Mystara from the Beckme era would be the best description. They quite literally love to toil and labor. It's a punishment for a dwarf is forcing them to sit down and not work, because they have a I don't want to call it OCD, but they have an obsession with just keeping themselves occupied all the time with doing something or other. But anyways, I digress on that. So the dwarves of the Dwarven Conclave region of space come from a world called Erakinor. Um, sorry, Erakinor. So, I'm having trouble pronouncing it. I'm the one that kind of like found the word. It's a sort of homage to the Moradin and the Dwarven Pantheon, as that is the name that is used for the Dwarven stronghold or that's the name of the Dwarven stronghold on Mount Celestia in the I guess in the Grand Plains when it comes to the gods in Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, etc., etc., etc. So, anyways, Erakinor is a high gravity world, mountainous and rocky. The air is barely on the surface is barely breathable. The atmosphere is somewhat inhospitable on the colder side of things. And most of as I said, the air pretty difficult to breathe, mostly due to industrial pollutants and the like. The only regions that are like somewhat habitable are the mountain steppes, as well like high up above the pollution line, which kind of like covers most of the lowlands in almost like a pea soup style fog of smog. Stuff grows, but it's in that region, but it's very sickly. Like I said, the mountain steppes themselves are where like crops and herd animals are raised, but well over 95% of the dwarven population lives underground. Uh, According to their own histories, and that the surface has never been a very pleasant place to dwell, and so their ancestors either were either were evolved to live underground or were born there naturally. It's hard to say. Meanwhile, the dwarves themselves, being on a high gravity world, are incredibly strong and robust, and they're going to be very similar to the mountain dwarves subclass that or I should say subrace that you find among dwarves in the PHB for 5e. So that's going to be the primary version of dwarves throughout, or I should say on Erakinor. Uh, there are the other variants, so I will be including like the Hill Dwarves as well as the Durgar. But however, I am putting a bit of a Dragon Age spin on it per se, where the Hill Dwarves are actually the variant of Hill Dwarves that exist are going to be sort of merchant caste or class of dwarves that have made their way beyond their home world and the worlds within the Dwarven Conclave to barter and trade with the other races throughout the verse. As a result of this, they they have lost a bit of their stalwart nature when it comes to enduring high gravity, since mountain dwarves get a +2 to their strength and hill dwarves do not. But they're still nonetheless fairly robust and resilient. I might actually, believe it or not, give those particular dwarves um, less of a con bonus and maybe more of a wisdom or even quite possibly charisma bonus, because there'll be there'll be negotiators and merchants and traders and what have you, and they're the ones that typically travel the space lanes on behalf of the Dwarven Conclaves. Meanwhile, the Durgar are they are heavy worlders, just like the mountain dwarves, although they come from a, a series of worlds within the Dwarven Conclave that exist around, um, I guess you'd say, like either exist in remote parts of a system, various systems, in which case they're very far from the sun of those systems, or the sun of that system isn't isn't a yellow sun, or even a red one for that matter. Might be like a brown or something similar, where the light and heat being illuminated from it isn't as great, but the radiation is higher. So well, maybe that's why the Durgar have acquired their unique uh, abilities outside of an underdark environment is through magical radiation. These are just kind of thoughts and ideas I'm coming up with for like dwarves in general, as I like them as I like them as a race or species in the verse, where they have this isolationist attitude, but they realize that they need certain things that they can't manufacture themselves or acquire themselves through in their own domain. So they're sending these representatives out to do the trading, and that's why the hill dwarves are a bit more gregarious than their mountain folk, their mountain dwarf cousins. But because of this, like I said, it's very similar to Dragon Age in the sense that they can't go home. At least for not for extended periods of time, because they are no longer acclimated to the heavy gravity worlds. Some are not even born on heavy gravity worlds. So when they get there, it proves to be a very difficult environment for them to live in. It's not that they can't live there, it's just very unpleasant for them. And so you'll find them like traveling the space lanes on various other worlds, acting as emissaries and diplomats on space stations as merchants, typically not the atypical merchant that has a stall or anything, but rather uh, they'd be uh, making business transactions for large sale bulk goods to bring back to the dwarven homeworlds, typically trading dwarven crafts, whether it be in the form of superior weapons and armor, either normal versions or magitech variety. Most of the dwarven worlds are out of sight of dead magic zones, although there are quite a few um, pockets on various worlds that are that are in the Dwarven Enclave. Some some of the dwarves that live there, um, like some dwarves live there their entire lives, completely deprived of magic, and those are typically remote and isolated communities. However, if there's speculation that the dwarves may have at first that's those dead magic zones where their species uh, basically was created, and that's partially the reason that dwarves typically have a higher resistance to magic and the like. Meanwhile, the pollutants that fill the air of Arakanor are a good enough reason as to why the dwarves typically have a resistance to poison of various types. Meanwhile, as I said, they live underground in these vast um, strongholds or cities that are truly a spectacle to behold, as the one might expect that they would be small, small hallways, narrow corridors, and that your average average-sized person might need to hunch down a little, but no, the dwarves build build on a gigantic scale. Inside their cities, you'll find like flying skiffs making their way across these vast underground cavern complexes that they have turned into their home. um, uh, like I said, this is just an idea I'm playing around with at the moment. I do like the idea of not necessarily it being a caste system, but because of the choices made either by the character, by a dwarf, or by their ancestors, determines uh, what role they fill in the society. Like, you could very well have like a hill dwarf thane on a high gravity world, but they would not be too comfortable there. They'd probably much rather build their home maybe on a space station or an orbit where the gravity can be closer to normal levels. And like, meanwhile, a mountain dwarf could very likely go out into the verse at large as a trader or a merchant or the like. But as I said, these are all ideas I'm playing with. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on the matter. Um, I've been rambling for about 16 and a half minutes thereabouts on this. It's a work in progress, to say the very least, but I'm certain that I'll be able to flesh it out a bit further as time progresses. I am counting down the days until the Spelljammer box set comes out, because I'm hoping that there's a lot of content in there that I can apply to the Misfits of the Galaxy setting. And fingers crossed, January next year, this game will actually be on Twitch. Who knows? Anyways, I think that's everything for this Sunday. Next Sundays might be delayed by a day, quite possibly, maybe not. Not exactly certain at this point. It's a long weekend, and I'm gonna be a bit busy. Anyways, till later. Take care, and may all your 20s be a natural.